I think we're due for another Chia space. Like we like to do these with some regularity, and I think it's time to check in. So we did a show not that long ago where we said, "Hey, what's going on with the crypto markets?" And we said, what's been one of the big winners was Doge. So Dogecoin had like a 3x run, but I don't think we can in any way ignore what Chia's done in somewhat of a similar time frame. I mean, it's darn near 3x in the same amount of time, and we have a tremendous amount of stuff that is coming out from CNI. The community is excited. Lucas, I know you've been looking very closely at this stuff. And been catching up on some of these things and keeping me abreast of some of the spaces that have happened. And some of these spaces have happened in kind of you know, not as obvious a way. So you really had to dig for these. So good thing that you were in the right place at the right time to hear some of this stuff.
Well, I sneak around. Sometimes I sneak out to the bar, aka Spaces, at night. And Gene, CEO of CNI, has been in Spaces of late. And maybe about 10 days ago, I saw Gene dropping into a couple of spaces, and he seemed to have a growing level of excitement. I've even used
Ebullient, I believe, was the word you used, right?
I've
Ebullient.
used ebullience. I love words. Giddiness, um, because he was dropping hints that something was going on the backside, and at first he didn't say anything, but I was like, Gene and Bram, mind you, were in a couple of spaces, and I thought, man, um they something's up. I could see it, I could hear it in their voices, and I knew that they were excited about something. Well, a couple of days ago, in a space that I missed, there was a space that I was on in the evening, and then in the next day, Gene actually talked about DTCC, and we've talked a
And,
lot about.
yeah, and the DTCC is near and dear to our heart because we've covered a lot of stuff that's been going on with the stock market and with GameStop. And if you're at all involved in any of that kind of stuff, then the DTCC comes up almost immediately because they're at the heart of a lot of what's going on with the shenanigans with respect to naked short selling. So yeah, that immediately kind of perked up my ears when you said, "Oh, they're talking about the DTCC."
Yeah, so my jaw dropped whenever and I had to go back and re-listen to that space. But my jaw dropped that Gene was actually bringing up the DTCC, because the potential for blockchain, as we've talked about before, one of the greatest potentials for blockchain to make an impact on the existing financial structure is to tackle the settlement window for stock trades. And we talked about this with Exodus. Um, when Exodus tried to move their stock over to a zero settlement, and they were denied. We've talked about GameStop and the the maybe unsuccessful attempts by the community to press and expose that settlement window and what's going on behind there. But DTCC is the vestigial place of the warehouse of stock certificates, and where the settlement actually occurs.
Yeah, they're kind of the core financial rails that the whole stock trading infrastructure works on. So thinking about Chia somehow being involved with the DTCC or replacing some portion of what the DTCC is doing is exciting and interesting, kind of a thing to think about, to contemplate.
And we know one, because we've gone back and listened to the statements that were made by the likes of the CEO of Citadel during the 2020 hearings, congressional hearings, in the wake of the GameStop Robinhood. um, I forget the name of the hedge fund, but that fiasco.
Citadel. Well, hey, before we get too far along, because we gotta at least mention this, right? Because all those names, every one of those players, right, that we're kind of listing off right now, because they're all listed right here, are all partnered up in this thing that DTCC is doing to, I don't do something similar. It's like if you look at what Project Ion is, it's got, parallel processing, and it's on a distributed ledger technology, aka blockchain, and all the bad guys in the GameStop saga are all lining up on this side. I mean, look who's here. Citadel is the one that you were thinking about. This is Ken Griffith right here, Citadel, and then you've got Robinhood, who took away the buy button. You got the DTCC. I mean, these were all the collaborators who, pretty much tried to shut down the entire GameStop saga, and here they are all buddied up, building something on the blockchain, and it looks like Gene's coming after them.
Well, there was some hedge fund that was sort of the fall guy in leading into that too, not the market maker. But Citadel, the most, I mean, the way I had a lot of takeaways, like stall as much as you can if you're dragged into a congressional hearing. But apart from that, the CEO of Citadel talked openly about the problems that having um, that closing the settlement window from days down to blockchain settlement could take care of.
I think the one you were thinking of was Melvin Capital. Is that the one that you were thinking of?
Yes,
Okay.
Melvin Capital, that was it.
Yeah.
And
And they were the one that they were featured in Dumb Money. Yeah, I think it was the guy that Seth Rogen was playing, where he was like, "How much did we lose today? $1 billion. How much did we lose yesterday? $3 billion." And that's when the guy who was on Parks and Rec, Hoffman, or yeah, was this Nick Offerman, was playing the role, and he's like, "Well, I'll come in and save you." And that's when Citadel stepped in and tried to help out with that. But yeah, Melvin was the one that got nuked in the whole deal.
well, but so as far back as 2020, Citadel was certainly interested in and aware of um, that the game would eventually be up for whatever is occurring between market makers and hedge funds, between large players, and the current settlement window that they have.
Yeah, because
And
they went from T+2, so they used to have 2 days to sort of sort everything out. Then we went to T+1, and I think that there's talk amongst these players of T0, so instantaneous settlement, and that's really what you need a blockchain if you're going to pull that kind of a thing off.
well, and there's other things that we need to bear in mind that have changed since 2020, even since the last what was it, the mother of all short squeezes, I believe, what the
The MOAS,
when
the MOAS, yes.
the MOAS.
Yeah.
So and what is that thing that has occurred? Fed now has occurred, and what was the there were other things that had to happen, at least from regulatory and the government's financial systems, that had to occur in order to move settlement over to a blockchain. Because if we're moving to 24-hour actual recorded settlements, we also need to be able to move money around on weekends and much more quickly. And there are other reasons for FedNow, but that essentially is what FedNow did for reserve banks around the country. It gave them the ability to begin to operate on the weekends and 24 hours a day.
So all the financial rails are sort of getting upgraded within the last 5 years. We've seen this push. We've seen these movements in this direction for sure.
And other things are also changing. And we talked about Google and the antitrust case against Google for what was going on with their marketing. We see now that the government, the DOJ, is prosecuting Visa, and that has been a monopoly that has been abused for, um, I mean, to in my point of view, for 20 years. Like we've known that
That was
merchants.
the first number that came to my mind when you were starting to say like how long, like 20 years for sure. And there've been billion-dollar lawsuits against collusive partners in the whole credit card industry that they have to pay out now. I think it was like a $5.6 billion settlement that was arranged for merchants that were taking credit cards. So that, yeah, there's big moves that have happened with credit card processing and in the whole shenanigans that have happened that they've been pulling off over the last 20 years.
So the government is admitting something that we've all seen, and that is that there are monopolies that have existed in especially the ad market for paying for the way that the internet operates, and also for the financial rails, the private side of financial rails of moving money around. And these have large implications for what blockchain and especially Chia can bring in a change. And the other thing that has happened that I've been excited and interested to see is, in the wake of Mark Andreessen talking on Joe Rogan about the debanking that occurred, and the revelations that have come um, that were overlooked. Because we've talked a little bit about debanking. We talked, with Dustin about some of the debanking that occurred with him. We
Well,
talked.
and in the context of when Kennedy was talking about this, because when we covered Kennedy's remarks at the Nashville Bitcoin conference, he said, "When I saw the debanking happening, that's when I got excited about Bitcoin. That's when I started to see the light on what Bitcoin was really about." So Kennedy's journey into understanding what crypto is all about and how the weaponization of the US dollar has been used not just against countries, but against individuals, like when there was the protests that were happening up in Canada, the that was sort of taking away this ability to protest by just saying, well, we're going to rip away your livelihood, we're going to rip away your ability to participate in the economy. That was a big deal, and it really turned a lot of people on to, a different way of doing this, which is permissionless and doesn't have the ability to get this stuff ripped out from underneath you.
Well, and not on my radar up until Andreessen's interview was, the extent. I mean, that the Secretary of the Treasury, was threatening to use regulation to stall the creation of Facebook's crypto DM, and the market that they wanted to create, with a blockchain, was astounding to me. And and what it says to me is that the resistance that has been put forth by government, that has been going on behind the scenes, is beginning to crumble. And I think it has everything to do with Trump's election and a pivot that is going to be coming under the new administration with regards to, the government's stance towards crypto. We've also seen this in the announcement that the chair of the SEC and another commissioner are resigning. Ostensibly, they have, sticky issues in their past with regards to being part of the regulatory pushback to stall crypto. Um, there was something else that's been part of this picture that's been building that makes that tells me that whether built or not, the world is looking for new solutions, and some of those solutions may have been, might be lying in wait to be announced by existing players like DTCC, like there's also what the we recently had the announcement that the SEC approved a stock exchange, a 24-hour stock exchange with settlement on blockchain.
The one in Texas, yeah.
I'm not sure. The one, Citadel and BlackRock have announced one that's going in Texas, and
Oh wait, no, that was the one. Yeah, I think you're right. The one in Texas that BlackRock was doing, they were just a competitor to the New York Stock Exchange. So right, they were. It's another place to list.
yeah, the other one that we saw, I don't there was an article that Zero Hedge ran on it. And I'm not sure how much of a player that is, but and I know that Citadel is also listed here in DTCC on their page. Yeah, here's that article on Zero Hedge. I don't know if it actually says the name. It says, oh, is it 24-hour exchange? Maybe that's the name of it, 24-hour exchange. Like, let's just be obvious. Um, whatever happened?
Nothing quite like calling something exactly what it is.
Yeah, what happened to those sneaky little made up Latin and Greek words that have strange spellings. Um, Phoebius. So why didn't they call it Phoebius? But with Citadel, you can also understand that some of these players that have money are going to be are going to not put all of their chips in one pot, and looking for associations with everything that could be coming along. So I don't think that we need to accept as an implication just because Citadel has an agreement with DTCC that they're not going to be trying to build out, or have some sort of interest in other parties who are moving in this direction.
They're casting their bread upon the water. I mean, what Larry Fink did, he spoke about Chia at one point too. I think we covered that too, right?
Yeah, spoke about it, but it was scrubbed, and he mentioned, what he was talking about was the tokenization of assets. And he said, really what BlackRock does is take all of these assets and mix them into various investment portfolios, and it would be the future is to make that easier, to make the ability to move and settle those assets into different financial instruments is that he said that's the benefit that BlackRock brings, and it is a wonderful benefit in bringing stability to markets. And to make it even more stable, we need to make that system more efficient. And in those words, you can hear him say, what he's not saying, but saying is, like, if we close that window of settlement down and make it a tighter and more immediate window, then we can get rid of dark agreements or manipulation by middleman in that system.
Well, to tie that in to what we're trying to talk about, so we're giving a bunch of background for what's really going on, but this is something that Gene was talking about in the spaces. So he said this a couple of times that if driving efficiencies is ultimately what's going to drive people to adopting a piece of technology, because if you can do it better, cheaper, faster, which we've talked about extensively, like if blockchain doesn't make it better, cheaper, faster, then there's not really a lot of incentive to doing it. So this banging this drum of saying we can do better on blockchains, and here's why. That's a strong message. That's an important message.
There's one more aspect of the resistance that the government has engaged in, with making this move to crypto, and it was on the tip of my tongue earlier. Finally came back to me. Do you remember in the wake of the collapse of Signature Valley Bank and Republic Bank that somebody asked Barney Frank, one of the co-authors of the Dodd-Frank bill, that retooled, um, the regulations for the banking sector, in the wake of the 2008 global financial collapse. They asked Barney Frank. They said, "Why is a bank that you're on the board of one of those that failed?" And he said it's because that bank has crypto customers. And he said that the government, the financial industry,
Ooh,
um,
this was Operation Chokepoint, Chokepoint 2.0, right?
yes, and the choke point was to force companies and people who were engaged in the crypto industry into a certain number of banks. And as inflation occurred, and the Federal Reserve responded by raising their interest rates, the investment predictions of those banks began to be squeezed out, and the Federal Reserve bailed out many banks, but it did not bail out a couple of banks. And those banks that it did not bail out, chief among them are Silicon Valley and First Republic Bank. And so what actually got happened was, crypto companies and people who were involved in the crypto industry were bankrupted. And that was an incredibly, um, that was a uh, that was a massacre of the crypto industry. And also let's not forget that it happened in the wake of of FTX, and FTX was also, I don't know, liquidated by interventions from Forget Not, CZ, Binance, um, and
Who
and
then landed in jail and did a plea deal.
yeah, landed in jail even though he's not a citizen of the United States. And remember too that he had he had an agreement with the Department of Justice, and he flew into Seattle. And when he landed, they arrested him, and they took the uh, the deal that had been made and ripped up the memorialization of it, the papers, and said, "Never mind, we changed our mind, um, and we've got you. So we're
Yeah,
going
just
to."
like Darth Vader, it's like pray that I don't alter the deal further.
I mean, it seems to be the history of the United States government that they um, they make treaties and then they rip them up. Um, but anyway, that's some of the broader history that leads us to an inflection point. What was the inflection point? The election of Donald Trump, the Biden administration and the Democratic Party and their resistance towards crypto, especially. I also should say we need not forget that FTX was the largest donor towards many to the Democratic Party, and was a darling in the House Financial Services Committee. Like,
Yeah, there were multiple pictures of Sam Bankman-Fried with various movers and shakers in the Democratic Party, with him just spreading money all over the place.
but literally Maxine Waters, the head of the Democrats in the House Financial Services Committee, blowing him kisses, um, which he is the darling boy who looks a little bit like a hobbit. But we know there was, their horse in the crypto race was taken out by Binance, and their response was I don't know. There's there I don't know that their response was
Was
targeted, but
well,
they were
well,
react.
it was to grab him and throw him in the gulag. I mean, that's what they did, right? I mean,
Well,
they
not
grabbed.
only him, but it wasn't like they turned and pivoted and said, "Oh, we were grooming FTX. We were trying to, push all of those companies that were engaged in crypto markets into using FTX and the services that they were providing, so that we could, monitor the on ramps and off ramps of crypto transactions through FTX, and they were playing ball with us." No, instead they turned around. They tried to clamp
And,
down.
and and that was also against the backdrop of the time when the IRS was saying that all transactions over a certain amount were going to have to get reported. Remember when that was going on too? And then they ended up walking that one back.
I didn't know that they walked it back. I thought that they actually were
No,
reporting
no, that got
transactions
that
over.
got walked back. You don't have to do that. They said
Yeah.
that was going to be too onerous to do that, and yeah, they managed to get that stopped.
Well, we'll see what happens in the future. Long story short, a great pivot has occurred, and the Trump administration now, is beginning to grapple with notions of how crypto is going to be an emerging sector in American economy, in global finance, in and I think what that means is that we are about to see the players who are involved in traditional finance begin to open up to crypto as a solution to blockchain settlement, and we have 100% seen it occur with 24-hour stock exchange, and we're going to see it in many other players, whether we've been aware that they were working on it or not. I would imagine that in that industry, there is a mad rush. If in 2008 the behind the scenes rush was to buy more banks, and to become too big to fail, uh, so that so that whenever the Federal Reserve raised its interest rates, that it backed up and supported some banks, as we saw that happen. And now I think that the financial arms of or the investment arms of the banking industry must be looking towards being a part of blockchain settlement. And
Well,
and
let's get to the meat of what Chia is doing because I think we've got some inkling of what's happening, right? Have we got enough backdrop? Because I think
yes,
we've laid
yeah,
the groundwork.
we've covered sort of covered all the points that I can think of that lead us to be um, to maybe begin to understand the excitement of, say, a CEO of a blockchain that has some very interesting aspects that may lend it towards um, being a sought after competitor in this emerging market. Chia.
Chia. So Gene drops into a space, and one of our friends, Drac, he's in a space and talking about some stuff, and Gene pops in, like you've mentioned, he's been doing, and he starts talking about some stuff, which was very very interesting as to what really might be going on here. And Gene said they've been building some tech, and I think we should just quickly throw these on the screen. So this cloud wallet thing has been going on for a bit now. Recently went into open beta, and then the signing app got released. And so essentially, what this allows you to do is have this nice little Web 2 interface into the world of Chia. You're able to um, put assets in there, do whatever, and then it can't really do anything until you interface with the app. So the app is using the secure enclave. It's storing your keys inside of there. So operating like like a very strong hardware wallet. So this thing holds your keys. It's able to interact with the cloud wallet. And so now, as Chia starts to pour a bunch of really good custody stuff into the cloud wallet, now you'll have this ability to hold assets inside of here. And if this is real world assets, if it's stocks, if it's GPU NFTs with Berkeley Compute, if it's the stuff that your friend Matt Hintz is doing with Solomon's Lot, then you've started to see this picture emerging where you have this ability on Chia and in the Chia Cloud Wallet to hold these really important kind of strong assets, whether they be stocks or the rest of this RWA stuff, along with, I would imagine, meme coins and tokens and whatever else that's already been created in the Chia ecosystem, and hold them in a strong way that you can't get rugged. I mean, this has been a drum that Chia's been banging for a really long time. If you've looked at the roadmap, they're developing strong custody solutions. Bram has said in various spaces that custody is one of the big problems that need to be solved that hasn't been solved, and he felt like it was really low hanging fruit. So here we are at the end of 2024, and some of all of this tech is starting to be in our hands. Like it's there for the community to start using it and playing with it. And Gene's in the community talking to us about what might come next, and he says, well, in January we're gonna have a big announcement, right?
Right. And he's also been using the phrase that I find titillating, more fun words, open markets. And we've also had the launch of Dexy Splash, the decentralized platform for offers files. Um, and I I think there's both the aspect of blockchain settlement, but there also exists, going back to Google, the ad market that they've provided. Um, I think we begin to see the window open up for the use of Chia, the things that they've built, the custody, the cloud wallet, the the easing of uh, of the use of blockchain, and the of the entry in and out of the chain. Um, coupled with what Chia brings with regards to the offers on Chia and the
Yeah,
way.
I think one market is the way that the marketing team at Chia has been referred to this, like where everything can be traded because of the way that the Chia infrastructure works is so unlike most other chains. It has this coin model where everything can interact, and because it has this baseline, everything can interact with everything, and because everything can interact with everything via offer files, you have this concept of, well, everything can be traded against everything. So as we start to see assets represented on the Chia blockchain, or that this is the only type of thing that's happening on the Chia blockchain, you could see block space getting filled up pretty fast if that's where the world is shifting towards, where everything is being traded in real time, 24 hours a day on the Chia blockchain. And maybe this is where, a lot of the push that's been happening within Chia itself to convert the code base to Rust, to make everything more efficient. Some of the things that have happened with the soft forks and the hard forks to be able to point back at some of the code that gets loaded onto the chain so that you can have really, really efficient movement of things that are happening on chain. Cats are bigger than XCH, but if you can do it in a very particular way, then you could have really efficient cat trading. And if cats are the way that things are represented, this is the way you represent stocks and a lot of other stuff, real world assets as NFTs, then you could start to have a lot of trades happening where that transactions per second goes up substantially, and even leveraging some of the stuff that Bram spent the better part of 2 years building in Chia Gaming, which we spent quite a bit of time talking about when Art came on the show.
Yeah, and Chia is, I when I first discovered Chia, I was taken aback with the offer files, and I said every other chain that we talk about, the gears are inside. Ethereum requires OpenSea or Mint Garden in order to exchange the assets that exist on it. Chia does not. Chia is like a bicycle chain, and the gears are on the outside. And I think that is something that, as eyes and regulation open up towards blockchains and crypto and what solutions that they can provide, I think this aspect of Chia is going to have maybe the most impact. And when we also have more people, and certainly I think um, in tech companies, in internet, in anyone who is engaging in the internet, think also about journalism and the outsized impact that uh, the monopoly that Google was able to acquire with their ad market and selling ads on the internet has had. I think what Chia could offer as a better solution for selling everything on the internet has to be something about what Gene is so excited about. And I think there is, well, he's talked openly that there is some partner that they're going to make an announcement about in January. I don't know.
Yeah, that was kind of late breaking news that that this isn't a customer that being worked with for the January launch, but that he specifically said instead of it being a customer, so this isn't like the Red Hat model, but rather a partner that they're working with that will lead to a lot of Red Hat style customers that would want to work with CNI.
Yeah, and in when I was I when I had a chance, caught Gene in a space the other day, I was very interested to ask him questions about his role in e-music, because some people may be more aware of it, but I he had obliquely mentioned at some point earlier in the space that um, what he brought to e-music, and at a crucial point in the timeline of that company, was he said we're going to use the subscription model. And there was a time whenever if you rewind to before iTunes and before the Apple Music Store and before the App Store and Google Apps, you know there was a time when you physically bought software and you didn't necessarily subscribe to updates to that software. And you paid for something and you own the rights to it. And companies that broke out in Web 2.0 understood that charging a subscription, he mentioned Netflix, and that the CEO of Netflix had been a friend of his, and also had been attuned to this change in what easing transaction costs and communication, like lessening um, uh, instead of like sending a CD, like being able to to have people download from a platform software updates, like, and how the companies that won out with that were those who understood how to monetize it correctly. And we also hear this narrative in the world of crypto that be your own bank. But if we look at banks and understand how they work, banks banks haven't held gold or held assets since before Venice, before the Fourth Crusade. Ever since the Fourth Crusade and the development of double entry bank keeping by the pirates of Venice, banks have engaged in fractionalized lending, and and to truly be your own bank is to be able to trade the things that you hold. And so I think what we're also about to see is
Well, I
a
the other thing that to me being your own bank means is when you say hold, it's a way to have custody over the assets that are under your control where you don't have that counterparty risk. What we've seen with some of the banking explosions and implosions and some of the custodians that have gone belly up because they weren't doing things the right way. This idea that you could eliminate the counterparty risk and hold on to things only works if you have some mechanism that's safer, stronger than what the banks were doing. So this idea that Chia is, putting a lot of emphasis on building this vault where it has protections and that you have the ability to do clawback transactions and get more sophisticated about how this stuff looks, it is enabling you to be a bank because I think that early promise that you could be your own bank, but if all that is seed words and signatures and it's really easy to get rugged, I think a lot of people would say, well, that doesn't feel like I'm a bank. It feels like I'm putting my assets at risk. And I think it was Gene and Bram who have said it feels like you're carrying around suitcases full of $1 million around, and that doesn't feel very safe. It feels very risky. You could easily get jumped, and then somebody could take all your money, and there's no real recourse without kind of tracking that guy down and trying to get your suitcase full of money back, which is problematic for most people. So this idea that building a vault and custody is kind of core to anything that you want to get done in the real world. It has a pretty strong resonance with anybody that's gotten their ass handed to them either in Terra Luna or Ethereum or whatever. And Gene pretty consistently says, Ethereum is not pulling this off. They're not making it better. Everybody is pretty much just like losing in these games because it's just too hard. It's too hard to do it right and to not get rugged.
well, and yeah, I think Tierra Luna and many of these this first first order of cryptocurrencies they've talked about being a bank, but they're a jewelry store, and they're a jewelry store with glass windows and glass display cases. And that's problematic. You mentioned the clawback. And when we think about the power of the clawback for, being your own bank, like the ability, like if the terms of a contract are not met, to be able to claw back those funds, or to me, this is where we really get into, yes, the custody, the both the open nature, the offers files aspect of Chia, plus the custody, um, and some of them, are potential, but of vaults and custody, but things like clawbacks coupled with that allow people to actually do what banks do, and that is to lend out the assets that they have, or to use them while being able to pull them back. So
Well, and that also seems like why the integration of Circuit DAO into the ecosystem is another important part because now you have a way that the fundamental token that exists on the infrastructure can now be leveraged to create the stable coin that is something that can be traded against. So now you have the real setup for how all of this stuff is going to work. Because if you're going to have a market, you have to have something that you're going to trade against. Now, it could be Chia, that's fine. Or, a lot of people might say, well, we operate and live within the US economy. So we want something that trades like the US economy does, because we've talked about what does it really mean to have contracts denominated in crypto. It means you're exposed to a certain type of volatility that you might not want to trade against, right? I mean, it'd be no different than if you said, well, I'm going to price my contract in milk. It's not that I want to take delivery in milk, but I want to be exposed to whatever milk prices are. Like, that's not the thing that a lot of people would want to write a contract in. So having a stable coin that exists in the ecosystem that you can use to write contracts against, and I'm even like using the word contract in a really important sense, because when you start thinking about one market, it means that you have contracts that can be written in ways that this can work. And Gene was even talking about some of the other more sophisticated stuff that might come into play with what's happening inside of Chia, with the fundamental rails that were put in place with data layer, being able to do things interesting like have title insurance, and the title insurance initial research being put on the blockchain and referenced against that you can drive market efficiencies. So all this stuff seems to be kind of swirling and coming into play for this January launch that Gene's been talking about.
Well, December can't roll through fast enough. I'm excited to see what the announcement is. I think maybe we're going to have a new maybe the word of 2025 is going to be Chi-Fi to replace DeFi. But I th- I th- I think I'm glad we have a conversation about what's been changing in the broader context of the world in which crypto exists, um, and where Chia might be headed in the upcoming year. So fingers crossed, all is well. I don't know if you have anything to add, but I enjoyed it today.
Agreed. It was a lot of fun, and we'll catch you tomorrow on FOMO.